My name is Artisa Hill, and I am the Grant Compliance Director for New York State Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and the lead contact currently for our SASP grant. I do have my colleague Josie McPherson, I do believe, on this call, which is our Senior Director of System Advocacy. Many of you are familiar with her and know her, and she is with us as well today. Just to review some logistics, closed caption is available at the bottom of the screen. So if you need closed caption, simply select the live caption button and select the option that you prefer to show your subtitles, full script, however you feel best. And also, if you have any technical difficulties, please use the chat box and let us know. We will be monitoring it throughout the webinar. So just pop that in there. We also have the Q&A box. So if you have questions as the presentation goes along, feel free to pop in your questions and we will do our best to answer. This webinar will be a refresher for many and an introduction to some. Our speaker is Elizabeth Bauer. I hope I said your last name right, Elizabeth. Okay, and Elizabeth will be providing us some history, overview of the purpose and of the program, and much more helpful information to assist you in administering this project. Elizabeth is the SASP Technical Assistance Specialist at the National Sexual Assault Coalition Resource Sharing Project, and she's been with them since 2016. She has worked in victim service and violence prevention since 1999. So she is very knowledgeable and well experienced in bringing a plethora of information to support the task revolving around state and territorial administrators and implementing the federal SASP funding, creating resources, tools, and so much more. Once again, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so feel free to pop your questions in throughout, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Elizabeth to get us started.
Thank you, Artesia. It's so great to be here with you all today. Thank you for that introduction. As she said, I am with the Resource Sharing Project, and we're a national project based out of the Iowa Coalition Against Sexual Assault. But since we're a national project, we're kind of all over the country, and I'm joining you today from Nashville, Tennessee, where it's about 70 degrees and cloudy. I'm sure your weather is a bit different up there today, but so glad to be here. Just a quick note about the Resource Sharing Project. Some of you may not be familiar with this, but a lot of our work is with supporting sexual assault coalitions across the country in states and territories. And as Artesia told you, I work a lot with the state and territorial funding administrators on implementing sexual assault specific funding. But we also have some projects that might be useful to local programs like you all. So we have some resources around rural projects, and then just some general sexual assault services information that I think would be helpful for you all. So I will make sure to share that for you all to check out our website and all of the great resources our team and different partners and collaborators have created over the years. So that's the quick introduction of the Resource Sharing Project, and I'm just really excited to talk to you about SASP today because I love this funding and all of the ways that it really supports survivors and really was created for healing services for survivors of sexual violence. So if we're ready, we will jump right in, and please, like Artesia said, you can chat in questions or put them in the Q&A, and we do have dedicated time at the end, but I'm happy to talk about a question if it's around a specific point or slide within the presentation. So here we go. Technology. So like I was saying, SASP is really the first and only federal funding stream that its only purpose is direct services for victims of sexual assault. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the history, which I think is interesting to see kind of where we are, where we came from, and where we are now and where we're going. So the way that SASP happens is it's the grant dollars are directed to state and territorial governments, and the governor of each state or territory gets to decide where that funding goes. And so in your state, it's one of the state agencies. And then that agency decided that the coalition would be a good steward of this funding. And so that's why you all have your funding through the coalition. And so that's like that in about 20 states or territories throughout the country. So those dollars go to the designated agency to really support the language of the statute at that time was rape crisis centers. You all might call them sexual assault centers or sexual assault programs or dual domestic violence sexual assault programs. And again, that provide direct services to survivors of sexual assault and their families. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment too. This is something that I talk to administrators about a lot, is that these funds were initially created to supplement other funding sources that address sexual assault on the state and territorial level. So administrators of these funds, along with coalitions in states and territories, are really tasked at looking with what is all the funding that we have for sexual assault? Do we have funding in STOP? Yes, you do. Do you have funding in VOCA funds? Do you have state designated funding, which New York does, thankfully? So really looking at what are the needs across the state or territory, where are the gaps, and how does each funding source really specifically, can really specifically meet those needs. So how does this funding get to you all at the local level? So a little bit of history. VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women Act, is authorized, and Congress appropriates how much funding. So from year to year, the funding might be a little bit different. There's some advocacy happening on the national level to actually increase SASP at this moment in time. Right now, you might have heard some information from your coalition about that yesterday on encouraging our individual legislators to pass the Violence Against Women Act. And then that money goes through the Office on Violence Against Women, which is part of the Department of Justice. And then the Office on Violence Against Women grants it to that state or territorial administrating agency. And then, like I said, in New York, there's a situation where there's an extra little step in there where the coalition collaborates with that agency, and they pass it through for the coalition to administer and to get out to you all, the subgrantees or the local sexual assault programs. So at this moment, the Violence Against Women Act was authorized in 1994. And it's been reauthorized a couple of times. It's currently needs to be reauthorized, but the way it works on a very basic level, and I'm sure someone at the coalition could probably speak better to this, but it's authorized until it just continues to be authorized with the same parameters as 2013 until it's officially authorized again. So it's still happening. Just because it's still in the process of being authorized. Everything is okay, is what I'm saying. In 2005, which, in the grand scheme of things was not that long ago, the SASP program was authorized in the Violence Against Women Act. And then it took some time to set that up and to have processes and structures in place to get it out to the states and territories. And that happened around 2009. And so again, in looking at the history of SASP, 2009, probably grants were starting to be made in 2010, maybe 2011. It really got rolling, which is not that long ago. And then just for you all's information, states and territories receive 2 years of funding, but your state administrator applies every year for SASP funding. So Artesia helped me with this slide just to give you a picture of funding to New York. And this is specific to the funds that flow through the Office on Violence Against Women. So we also know that there's sexual assault funds through the VOCA grant to consider as well. But if you look at that, you have over $7.5 million for STOP funding. Anyone who's a mathematician can drop in the chat how much of that, how much is 20% of that? Roughly 20%, well, a minimum of 20% has to go to sexual assault services. But 20% of 7.5 million, there's some other factors in there, like there's administrative costs they pull out. So, but still, that's a lot of money for sexual assault services, right? And then SASP, a little over 600,000. And then I was really pleased to see that you all in New York have a good chunk of money that's carved out from your state funds for sexual assault and domestic violence. There are many states and territories that have zero funding for sexual assault services at that state or territorial level, but have domestic violence funds at that level. So I'm glad to see that you all have that. So again, when we're talking about SASP funding, it's for direct services. And when we're looking at that kind of comparison with STOP funding, that set aside of 20% for sexual assault and STOP could be used for courts or training, that kind of stuff. And so it's really important to think about that. It can be used for victim services. That's kind of at the discretion of the administrator. But that's why SASP is so important and so special, because it can only be used for survivor services. So I'm just going to take a breath right there about kind of the history and how this funding got out into the world, and see if there are any questions so far. All right. Well, let's move into the purposes of SASP. And this is taken directly from the statute, the authorizing statute within the Violence Against Women Act. I think it's important to really look at this, exactly what the statute says, and then we can talk about what that means on the ground, right? What is it? How does this play out in New York? How does advocacy look? How can it look? So as you see, it's the purposes are to assist states, Indian tribes, and territories in providing intervention, advocacy, accompaniment, support services, and related assistance, right? So those are very broad categories that we can explore, like what does advocacy mean? What are support services? And really anything that survivors are telling us that's healing for them, that it's helpful for them to heal from sexual violence across the lifespan, should be able to fit into these broad categories, right? It's also important to note for SASP that there's not an age limit on who can be served. It's adult, youth, children of any age, and you don't have to connect. Like if you're serving a child, it doesn't mean you can serve a child. They don't have to be connected to an adult or guardian receiving services, like with some other funds that are out there. So assistance, all of those things, and support for also the family or household members of survivors of sexual violence, and those affected by the victimization, and of course, except for the perpetrator. So, you know, a big note, SASP is for any age across the lifespan. It does not matter when the assault occurred. So this is also, again, from the statute where that talks about what interventions may include. And I really just want to make sure we lift up the word may. This doesn't mean per SASP that you have to do all of these things. These were some things that, again, were happening in the field that survivors were already accessing. So 24-hour hotline, accompaniment through criminal legal processes or to a forensic exam, any sort of medical appointment, really. It doesn't have to be an exam, through any sort of court proceedings, any sort of support that someone may need, that the impact of sexual violence is affecting them, right? For whatever it may be. Crisis intervention, that short-term support group or individual support, and then really just any sort of support for survivors of sexual violence and their loved ones, essentially, right? So again, these are things that may be included in services. There's some more. Again, information, support, referral for the family or household. And we really wanted to make sure to lift up 2 culturally specific services can be funded with SASP, including outreach activities for underserved communities. And then materials developed like around what these services are, right? What kind of services do you provide with SASP? How are you communicating that to the outside world, to your community? So yeah, before we kind of get into some more specific examples, I just wanted to reiterate within these services and within those broad categories and the purposes that we don't have to fit services into like a tiny little box, right? Like we can be creative about what our communities need, and we can really put those into the bigger box, right, of advocacy and support and accompaniment. Questions about that so far?
And feel free to raise your hand or pop it in the chat. And I'll be sure to unmute you if you do have any questions or anything going on.
Yeah, and I know there's just like a wealth of knowledge in this virtual room right now, right? You all have been providing services, have been challenged with reaching survivors. So I am just sharing kind of like the parameters of SASP, and really would love to hear from you all too about what you're doing and what the challenges are and what your successes are as well. Because the next little part we're going to go into is some examples from other states and other programs and other territories. So I'll kick us off with a couple of things, but I would love to hear things that you all may be doing or you maybe want to do or you heard might be helpful from survivors. These are some kind of broad things that we've heard around the country. And I was actually just talking to an administrator this week about a program she actually visited. It was within the community. It was at a farmer's market, actually, and they were providing food that was sourced from different folks' gardens who volunteered. So you could go through kind of this like different tables of produce and recipes and gather whatever you needed. And at the end, they had folks there who were just handing out information. They had separate spaces if you wanted to talk to someone about how sexual violence has impacted you and your life. So there was that kind of like community aspect, that relationship building and meeting some basic needs with nutritious foods. That the program was really trying to be entrenched in the community and seen as a support for their whole community, right? And also a support for survivors of sexual violence. So I was really lucky to be able to talk with that administrator about that awesome approach to reaching survivors and supporting survivors in their community. And one of the things we've been talking about kind of in our movement to support survivors over the past decade or so is the research out there around healing from trauma and how we have to have a mind-body approach together, right? That one of the things that sexual violence does to us is that it disconnects us from our bodies. It makes us not trust our bodies. And so having things that are movement-based really helps folks heal from trauma of all sorts, right? But specifically sexual assault as well. So there's a great book that we actually shared with all of the state and territorial administrators, and I think all of the coalitions around the same time, a couple years ago, called The Body Keeps the Score. And it really illustrates how it's important for us to reconnect with our bodies to heal from the trauma of sexual violence. So I highly recommend that. And it share some of the research around this, right? The science around how our brains and our bodies are impacted by sexual violence. So that's why things like trauma-informed yoga groups are SASP fundable services, right? We've heard from folks around gardening groups, right? Getting your hands in the dirt and being in community with folks who understand what sexual assault is and how it impacts folks, right? So these different services really speak to that, building community and connection, which is what we have heard from survivors is very healing, right? I talked to a program, that's probably been a year or so now, who started a walking group. So advocates, survivors from the programs just started walking at a specific park. They would start talking about it, organically grew into survivors asking each other, you know, what books have been helpful to you? So it became organically a walking and book club group. They would do their walk and then they would sit and chat about a specific book, how it's helped them heal, or how just how it's impacting their life, right? So that was sort of a survivor-led initiative, which is also something we should think about too, how survivor voices are influencing how funding is administrated, how programs create services and sustain services. I really like this service and an idea around cooking groups, right? A lot of folks who've experienced sexual violence have issues with food. And so talking about like how food nourishes us and fuels us, and then doing something together, right? Sharing, having a cooking class or talking about how food and cooking and all of that has impacted, how sexual violence has impacted that. So these are just a couple of things that I've heard around the country. I'm curious to hear if folks have other things they're thinking about or maybe want to try, or have heard from survivors that might be helpful. Well, we're going to revisit this right before we end today. Oh, I have a message, it looks like. Animal assisted therapy. Yes, animals are so healing, right? And so having dogs, I've seen bunnies, right? Like those big floppy eared bunnies visit your program, or, you know, in different parts of the country, horse riding is very popular. Art group, yes, exactly. You know, painting, drawing, using your hands, yoga workshops. Yes, journaling groups. Oh, thank you all for sharing. This is great. Yeah, so providing journals for survivors. I know that that's been done before, or providing specific books. for that healing. And, you know, just a note, you know, with SASP funding, we know that a lot of SASP funding across the country goes to dual programs. And so just a note to make sure we're really focusing in on survivors of sexual violence with the SASP funding, right? Like anyone can really, if you run a dual program, there's all kinds of things like this, like you're mentioning too, journaling and yoga workshops, that's helpful too for survivors of domestic violence. But we just need to be really mindful that sexual assault money is reaching survivors of sexual violence too. Yeah, let me know if you'll have more examples. These are really great. And I'm curious what kind of animal assisted therapy is happening. So the next kind of chunk of time we're going to spend together is talking about the SASP frequently asked questions document. It's a super helpful document, and I've broken it down into different slides and different talking points. So I think it's really good for folks doing services on the ground to really have a grasp of the SASP parameters. And I have found it helpful too in the past with different programs or administrators who are thinking about doing different services that may not fit into that traditional like hotline or some of those things that was listed in the may include earlier, that the FAQ has been helpful in making a case for providing services in a different way. So we can kind of use this document that comes directly from OVW to say, you know, this is what this says. So how do we make this work in our community? Yes, we will share. I will make sure that our TCI has this, and yeah, we will be sharing it. And I'll also share the document straight from OVW. It's on our website in English and in Spanish, but it's an OVW document, so straight from the funder. So yeah, so I've mentioned this before, the question about can funds be used to support services to children? Absolutely. Services for child victims, like I said earlier, do not have to be provided in connection with serving a parent. And there's no age restrictions, right? And then we also know so that the whole thing around SASP can be used to fund services and support for loved ones, essentially, is the catch-all term I'm using. Because we know that a lot of times supporting children, providing services to children also means providing support to their parent or caregiver or loved one who is there with them, right? So yes, I know there's other funding streams where you cannot serve children, or there's limitations on that, but not with SASP. And so that kind of gets us to this question about child advocacy centers. So I don't know if anyone on the call's program is an umbrella program that might have a shelter and a rape crisis center and a child advocacy center within it, which is totally fine. But generally, a standalone child advocacy center may not be eligible for SASP funds because the focus of this program is to establish, maintain, or expand rape crisis center services without regard to the age of the individual. And we often see child advocacy centers have a very specific age group, right? Children, 18 under usually, that they serve. So yes, that means SASP funded programs must be able to provide services to survivors of all ages. And additionally, another point we'll get to is that these funds can't be used for prosecution or law enforcement projects, for forensic interviewing or exams, which are often kind of the core services of child advocacy centers. So not to say that if a child advocacy center is exploring serving all ages, that they may be eligible for funding. So not everything is black and white, even though we try to make it right. I also should have said this a slide or two ago, but you may learn new information about SASP right throughout this presentation today. And if you're kind of like, oh, I don't know if we should be doing this or if this fits, like, it's okay. We can have a conversation about that. I'm sure Tizia will welcome that. And we'll just make sure we're good moving forward, right? So don't feel stressed about that at all. So can projects include education and prevention activities? And so they cannot. There are other funds I know that can do that, but again, this is where we kind of get, we're in the gray area a little bit too, right? So no prevention or education, but you can provide information about that's outreach, right, to folks about your services. So, maybe you see a need in your community for teens to be served, but teens aren't reaching out to you, right? So how do we reach teens? We can go to schools, we can talk to them about services, we can ask them what might be helpful to them, what services are healing to them. And this is like this, I love this is like so old school, like a program can use pamphlets. Yes, okay. I know a lot of us are kind of getting away from that, right? Or brochures in this virtual world we're living in now. But we're kind of going back to that. Like some of that is really helpful to have something I can hold on to in writing. So yeah, that kind of stuff where you're doing outreach about the services is allowable with SASP, but straight up like educational presentations and prevention is not. So love this question. Can these funds be used like that focuses on a particular age? And that is allowable, right? And so again, SASP funds are small and mighty. So if we really want to like focus and target our funds in our program, that's I think that's strong, right? Like that's like looking at what is a really what's a particular need that's kind of rising up right now, and we can focus that on a particular age in our project, but your program still has to serve folks across the lifespan. What would we do without volunteers, right? So yes, funds may be used to support volunteer-related activities for volunteers who are providing direct service, right? Do we have a volunteer that's helping set up our support group and helping to run that, right? And folks who maybe supervise those volunteers of direct services. So again, if we can tie that thread to direct services, for volunteer related expenses can be covered with SASP. So all types of sexual assault services are supported by SASP. They can be used to address intimate partner sexual assault, stranger and non-stranger sexual assault, adult, adolescent, child, regardless of when the assault occurred. So SASP funds can be used to serve adult survivors of child sexual abuse, again, youth, children, elders, and both male and female victims may be served. And, we see with youth and children that the statistics around who is a victim of sexual violence is a little bit different than adults, right? So we see boys and teen boys and children who need our services for sexual assault, right? So that is why that's also lifted up that both male and female victims may be served. And also I would add that there is so much money out there for domestic violence services that intimate partner sexual violence will hopefully be addressed within domestic violence funds. And so we do see some states or territories or even local programs really focusing in on survivors of sexual violence outside the context of domestic violence. So just a thought as you think about your services and projects moving forward. So yes, kind of to this point, just really directly that SASP funds cannot be used to address domestic violence. So in the case here of someone who comes to you first for domestic violence, that's why they reached out to your program, and disclose a history of sexual assault. As long as there's services provided specific to sexual assault and that the survivor has asked for that, and then SASP funds can be used, right? But we can't just say, well, this domestic violence survivor has experienced sexual assault, so I'm going to serve them with SASP funds. We have to make sure that there's specific services for sexual assault being provided and that they've expressed that that's what they want. I know that's a tiny bit in the weeds, and I'm happy to unpack that or talk about that more, or individually offline another time if folks want to do that. I'm just going to pause for a second, see if there's questions or comments about that or anything so far. So here's another example. So SASP funds could support a survivor of domestic violence and accompanying them to a forensic medical exam for sexual assault, but not like generally supporting a domestic violence shelter. So this is the question that always gets a little bit hairy. Can SASP funds be used for training of staff or advocates? So the answer is maybe, that funds can be used to train folks who are providing direct services to survivors of sexual violence, specific SASP grant funded services, right? But we can't do training like for law enforcement or for our partners at the mental health agency or general training with the funds that the SASP funds for direct services, right? So if you have a staff person who is 100% funded with SASP, SASP can pay for 100% of a training that they wanted to attend, right? And we always try to lift up the National Sexual Assault Conference because it is very specific to sexual assault services and advocacy. So say you have an advocate who is 50% funded with SASP. So kind of like generally we could pay for 50% of the National Sexual Assault Conference registration or whatever goes around that, right, for them. So we want folks who are providing grant funded services to be trained, and we also want it to be equitable and prorated and to make sense for SASP to pay for certain pieces of that. And this is if you're looking at doing some staff training, like obviously it makes sense if you're going to host a training that all of your staff should go, right? And so what's the best way to like kind of share that cost among different grants? And if you have some questions about that, I know the coalition can probably help, and I can help too. Like we can make a plan to try to figure out like what's the best way, and I know our finance folks, if we have any here, are like, yes, how do I document that in the best way for our funders? Yep, so here's another example again, straight from OVW. So providing specific services, a specific technique, training on that. and then it should not be, that shouldn't really be the focus of the grant, I think is what this last sentence is really trying to say. Training should not be the focus. Services for survivors is the focus. Yeah, so I think I kind of touched on this. It can't be used for training or curriculum development. So this is something the RSP has been focused on most recently, is serving adult survivors of child sexual abuse. We've seen that that's a gap in our field, that folks who are still feeling the impact of abuse they suffered as children, that there's often times not services, they don't see themselves in the services that are out there, or the name of our program or where services are provided doesn't really speak to them. So we have a couple of projects right now focused on serving adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, one of which is information and some online learning we've put together specific for administrators to understand that, because we want to make sure that our funders understand that this is a need, and that this is an allowable service, specifically with SASP. So again, there are no limits on when the assault occurred. You don't have to be fleeing violence. You don't have to just be responding to someone in the immediate aftermath of an assault. There's no limit on when the assault occurred, or what their age was when it had occurred, right? And again, both male and female survivors may be served. And I'm just curious if we can take a moment to ask if anyone has been seeing this, or are you focusing on maybe trying to reach adult survivors? I know sometimes we talk with dual programs, and folks share that folks in the domestic violence shelter have disclosed that they survived sexual assault as a child. And so we're seeing how those things intersect as well. And so, yeah, we're really seeing the need to help serve adult survivors. We also know that a lot of survivors of childhood sexual abuse who are, in their 30s, 40s, 50s and above, right? There may not have been services, support services, counseling services when we were younger. And so now really maybe feeling that impact and having some of those memories come back, we really see a need for services in this area.
And Elizabeth, we did have a question to pop
Yeah.
up. So for now, will this be just for male and female victims? What about trans and non-binary folks? Will that be,
Yes.
will we be able to use that as well?
You absolutely can. And the government language has not caught up with that necessarily. And so I think whoever lifted that up, I really appreciate you saying that. Yes. Oh, whoops, I didn't mean to click that. Folks who are bi or trans, we should be serving in our programs. I know there are some discrimination pieces that we can share from OVW, but this specific FAQ is a bit dated. And so we probably need to work with them to update that. So thank you for asking that.
And then also we have Heidi Ross in the chat, and Heidi stated that, yes, we see adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse sometimes coming in for an adult trauma, but disclosing a childhood trauma as well.
Right, right. Thank you for sharing that, Heidi. And yeah, so it just really speaks to how we have to understand the impact across the lifespan, and how someone who's experienced childhood sexual abuse, someone who experiences sexual abuse as a child, that impacts their development, right? And this is like a whole nother course for another day too, as opposed to someone who's experienced sexual assault for the first time in adulthood, it's different, right? It's not worse or anything, but we have to understand that if someone also has experienced childhood sexual abuse, how that's impacted them in their growth and their development, in their whole, how they trust folks, how it's impacted their relationships, right? So again, we have a lot of resources coming out about this. Some is already out there, but we're working on some more stuff as well. And I'm glad to see that folks are recognizing this need too. Others want to share about serving adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, or maybe something you've seen? Oh,
We have Janine and Heidi. I can't recall exactly what organization you're from, so my apologies. But Janine is from the Safe Center in Long Island, and she says, just to chime in, we service secondary survivors, those who are not offending family members. And after assessment, we find that the secondary survivor also have sexual trauma histories as well. And thank you, Heidi, from Beth Israel. Thank you.
yeah, that's yeah, Janine, thank you for saying that. We have heard that too, right? So again, why we need services to support caregivers and parents, because we see sometimes folks who are new parents, or their child is around the age they were when they were first assaulted. We see that coming up for caregivers or adults, right? And so we have to yeah, we have to understand that and help folks heal from that too. Thank y'all for sharing in the chat. Oh, and Julianne, yeah. Oh, right. Yes, going to the local substance abuse residential program for women who are adult survivors. Right. I mean, we know that's one of the ways that survivors cope or survive with sexual assault is through alcohol or drug use. And right. And so I'm so glad that you all are a resource for folks who are in recovery or trying to recover.
Teresa Davis has a question raised.
Oh,
Teresa,
yeah, go ahead. I'm going to go back.
Teresa, you could feel free to unmute yourself, and if you feel comfortable with asking.
Oh, she says it was accidental.
Oh, okay, okay.
We've all clicked the wrong thing before. It's happened to all of us.
Yes.
Okay, switching gears just a little bit. May SASP funds be used for SANEs or SANE programs? And so they cannot. Again, that's typically a criminal justice system activity, a law enforcement activity. So funds can't be used for the SANE or the forensic exam, but it can be used for the advocate accompanying someone through that to the exam or through any part of that system. And I know that like there's other funding, right, that's really looking, has popped up again over like the past 5-10 years, really looking at SANEs and forensic exams. So again, SASP is small and mighty. And so we want to really focus it on the gaps in survivor needs. Do y'all's programs have exam or SANEs on site or provide exams on site? Is it kind of everywhere? Okay. Heidi's program does. Yeah. So another great question on our FAQ here: may SASP funds be used for response teams of any kind? Not really to coordinate those. Again, it's not, there's not a super direct line to direct services there. But if the advocate is funded, their time to attend with SASP, their time to attend those meetings may be covered as part of the advocacy that they provide. So you really want to think about, though, is that the best use of SASP funds, or is that, yeah, just something to think about. Because again, I know there's funding out there. SARTs are really a popularly funded thing nowadays. So something to think about. Then the hotline question, which, oh, thank y'all for sharing about SANES in the chat. Yep. Respond to local hospitals. Okay. So the hotline question. So the hotline, is your hotline specific for sexual assault? Yes, then SASP, no trouble. If it covers, if you're an umbrella agency and it covers an array of issues, again, really looking at prorating SASP, and then prorating like the staff who answer it. And I know that can be complex, right? Because you don't know who's going to call, or, but really thinking about a method behind figuring out hotline coverage. And then again, is SASP the best use of funds for a hotline if it's a multi-use hotline? Do you have other funds that are kind of like, that can be used for domestic and sexual violence? Maybe that's a better use of a hotline. I'm not sure how hotlines are funded in New York. It's often a long conversation with many programs in many states. So if you want to talk more about that, again, individually or offline, I'm here to help with that as well. Oh yeah, many providers collaborate with local hospitals for SANE services. Yeah. Yep. So I don't know how you all may run specific support groups, but if you're separating folks, again, this is so outdated, by sex, which is interesting in and of itself, right? What is it necessary to do that, right? Like, can we have, especially when we know that sexual assault impacts men and women, especially if we're talking about adult survivors, is it necessary to separate folks out? And again, to the question earlier, how does that impact non-binary or trans folks? So I don't know if people are really doing this anymore, like really strictly, like this is a women's only support group, especially regards to sexual assault, but just know that there's another slide about this. You have to document that. Even if you can say like, this is really necessary to the, and essential to our program, there still has to be comparable services to someone who maybe wanted to access that group. An antiquated kind of practice, I think, in regards to serving survivors of sexual violence, but definitely understand, right, if we're talking about domestic violence, how that might be a little bit different. So this is a very to the point thing from our funders here, that they use the term short-term counseling in the statute, and so they defined that in this FAQ that's maybe provided for up to a year. So there may be more nuance to that. I don't want it to come across as that you can only provide services to someone for a year. I think this is very specific to counseling by a licensed therapist kind of thing. And I don't know if there's any wiggle room on this, but I feel like OVW would want to meet the needs of survivors. So if this is an issue for any program in New York, like, let's talk about it and see what we can do. Artesia, do you know if this is an issue at all, or is anybody?
I haven't seen that as an issue, but I'm definitely gonna want to talk to you a little bit more
Yeah.
about that, because I thought about another program that we had some concerns with that. Just finding out if they did need long-term counseling, is there something we can provide to make sure they're still allowed to cover funding for that client. So yeah, I'll definitely like to touch
Okay.
base with that,
Sure.
and I'll reach out to our programs to find out if they're running across that as well.
Awesome. All right. I'm not sure. I can't remember if you all fund any universities, but I know there's like university programs popping up, and it's universities are trying to be more responsive to survivors of sexual violence. So they are, if they meet the rape crisis center definition, and are using SASP funds to provide, again, you have to provide direct services. I know a lot of university and college-based programs do a lot of education. So something to think about there. But yes, there are, I have seen rape crisis centers essentially operated out of a university. So again, if this is something that y'all are looking to fund, or if there's universities who have approached your program about this, like something for us to enter into a conversation about. We don't want to rule it out if that's what survivors need in that community. This is the question every finance person wants to talk about. So let's think through this for a second. So can SASP funds be used towards rent and office supplies and your computer and phones and things like that? So absolutely, right? Because most of what, so SASP funds, direct services, someone has to provide those direct services, right? So a staff person, so that's a chunk of what SASP should be doing. And that staff person needs things to do their job, right? They need a desk, they need a phone. But again, it's looking at how much that person is funded by the grant and what makes sense to be charged to the grant. And I'm not a finance person, I am a program person, but I've had to like deal with this with finance people and like figure this out together. And I know there's other ways. I am not going to speak to like what's it called, indirect cost, or if you have a cost allocation plan, that's way out of my purview. But what I do know is one of the cleanest ways to do this, if you don't have one of those indirect cost rates or whatever, is, again, if I'm 50% funded by SASP, then my phone can be 50% funded by SASP. And you can feel really good about like that's a methodical way to do that. Are there other things that you might need as a staff person? Yeah, maybe. Now, maybe I need a hotspot. Maybe I need, so if it's reasonable for you to be able to do your job, then let's figure it out and let's make it happen, right? So yeah, that's the biggest allowable question that we usually have. This is one too that sometimes like Artesia and I could work together or like take it up. We might have to ask our grant manager at the federal level for some of the things that might be not kind of typical, right? Like a phone and a computer or office furniture, but we can figure it out together. Questions about that I may be able to answer? Okay. So again, these are unallowable activities that we've talked about with administrators, that's kind of we've had conversations about in some of our trainings where we've collaborated with OVW. So I think you can definitely hang your hat on this. If there's something that seems odd to you, like let's talk about it. But overall, like general operating costs, like the executive director, can SASP pay a portion of their salary? Generally, no, unless that person is providing a direct service, right? The receptionist, maybe, generally no, unless again, they're providing a direct service. I mean, that's your real litmus test, right? Again, prevention activities. There's a whole different pot of money, right? Specific for rape prevention education. That's not SASP. Those forensic exams that are really tied to the criminal process. We can't fund SART teams. And then, yeah, any salaries for folks not providing those direct services. Questions about that? Does that all kind of make sense?
So we do have a question. What does SART stand for again?
Yeah, great question. Sexual assault response teams. And so typically those teams come together to address issues within the criminal justice system, or it's about cases or like changing that system. Responding to survivors absolutely is part of that. But it's often about systems advocacy, not a particular survivor. Even though sometimes those cases are used as examples, but yeah, so another way to think about it is systems advocacy, which is not something that SASP should be supporting. But we all know it's interconnected, right? Like to serve a survivor, sometimes we have to figure out how to change or work around a system, right? But that, we can kind of tie that to that specific survivor. Thank you for that question. And then SANE stands for Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner, just to get ahead of that. So a specific nurse trained to do forensic sexual assault exams. Any other questions about unallowable? Well, again, let's kind of regroup about what is allowable and what's possible. So I really, even though I shared the statute and those very kind of, you can tell the government wrote them kind of words in broad categories, I really love to work with states and programs and territories and administrators and coalitions about thinking broadly, right? Like, what is it that folks need in your communities? What is it in your state? Where are the gaps? What is healing to folks, right? And so just even asking that question to survivors, can really kind of change how we use our SASP funding specifically, right? But how we provide services that are really outside of that system and really focusing on survivors and their needs. So, some of the things that we talked about, this whole mind-body connection, running groups, dance classes. I actually took a workshop a couple of years ago. It might have been at the National Sexual Assault Conference, but it was all about, we actually danced in the class. And like, I can't tell you like how good I just felt right after that workshop, right? Just being with folks who understand the impact of sexual violence and moving my body and like just being there. It's awesome, right? And think about like how we can use those kind of things too, again, to reach younger folks and to get younger folks engaged in our services. I've already kind of talked about this, really looking at adult survivors of child sexual abuse and how we can reach them and let them know our services are for them. And then again, survivors who, what does it look like for us to serve someone who was assaulted 5, 10, 20 years ago, right? And how we can help them heal from that, the impact that may still be affecting their lives and affecting their ability to live full lives, right? A lot of our services were initially built I'm speaking generally here, kind of across the country, were initially built to respond to the immediate aftermath of an assault, to someone who called the police or someone who called a crisis line. And what we know now, right, is that there are so many folks whose lives have been impacted by sexual violence who still need services, right? And it's one of the reasons SASP was created. So I challenge you to think like about healing services and what's possible. Look at what you're doing now and look at how's that working, how is that not working. And I see Janine has put into the chat, would this be considered underserved populations? I think in some ways, right? I think we've learned a lot from culturally specific programs who may not receive federal funding or some of this funding that we're used to, who are doing services, who are doing things that are responsive to their communities, right? That help them right, stabilize and then heal and thrive, right? And so the example I used early on about the farmers market, that was a culturally specific program, right? The need in our community is that folks need healthy food, folks need food, period, right? So we're going to meet that need and we're going to talk to them. We're going to let them know we understand sexual assault and we're here to serve our community. So that's, yes, absolutely, Janine, tying that back. And you know what, like what feels healing for you on an everyday basis? We've been doing things for, you know, hundreds of years to deal with trauma in different ways. And you know what, when you've had a bad day, you know, just to kind of break it down to a smaller scale, what's good for you? Going for a walk, listening to music really loud, right? And so I think we have to look at ways to reach survivors and to be responsive to them. That's healing and that's kind of divorced from any sort of system, right? Folks still need, who are going through, you know, criminal legal processes, need our assistance too, and need these things too, right? It's not, we're not throwing that out, but we know that most survivors do not access the criminal system. If we're talking about adult survivors right now, right, most of them, it's not even an option, right? But folks still need services. So yeah, these are some things, again, we've heard kind of, we're kind of couching this back up, like we've heard across the country of how folks are using SASP because it can be used in these ways, right, for really direct healing services. So yeah, here's another opportunity for you all to share, like, what are some things that you've heard or things you might want to try or things you're already doing that's really outside of systems work or some of those traditionally funded services. Acupuncture, yes, love. Massage therapy, acupuncture. I'm not sure if I've heard that being SASP funded, but we could probably make a case, right? We could figure it out together. Yes, right. For incarcerated individuals, we know there's so many folks who are incarcerated who have experienced sexual violence and they need us too, right? Yeah, teen survivors group. That's a great idea. Yeah. Oh, it's pro bono. Okay, the acupuncture. Yes, I've worked in a local program where a massage therapist came in pro bono once a month and did like 10-minute sessions. It was awesome for survivors and staff. Yeah, so please keep chatting in. One of the things, oh, Team Mom Survivor Group, yes, great idea. One of the things that we wanted to share too was some of the MUSKIE forms, the reporting tools, some tips on that. So I'm going to pull that up, and I would like to propose maybe to take just like a small break, maybe like 5 minutes. Or TC, does that sound good? And I will
Yes, that sounds perfect.
yeah, I will pull up some of those resources, but I want to respond to this chat. Would
Question.
SASP be able to use help a survivor by close to where they have to attend court? I think we could make that work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Great question, Caitlin.
So we'll take a 5-minute break, and let's say, oh, we have another question.
Food options for teens. I have heard that this has been funded, right? Like if it's connected to the sexual assault services for the group, if it's 100% covered by SASP, then yes, that can be an option. Translating your brochures, yep. But again, you couldn't use 100%, you couldn't pay for it all out of SASP translating brochures. You'd have to have a method of prorating it across all of your grants. Yep, cool. My question, I think initially was, what are some things that you're doing service-wise, right? That might be kind of outside the traditionally funded things. And then folks were asking, hey, we're doing this or that, like, can this be funded by SASP? Thank you, Catherine, for the question. Sometimes it is hard to follow in the chat.
Mhm.
All right.
So you want to meet back around 2:20, take a quick 5-minute break?
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'll pull up our friends at the MUSKIE stuff.
Okay, sounds awesome. Okay, so looks like we are going to now take a view of the MUSKIE reports. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
Yeah. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back from the break. I just wanted to share the MUSKIE, the School of MUSKIE has some great tools that I wanted to make sure everyone knew about. So each grant program has their own page. So we're here on the SASP Formula one. I cannot speak to Just Grants and all of that. So sorry for anyone dealing with Just Grants and the trauma that it has caused. So I'm gonna skip over that part, but so your administrator and the coalition, they have their own report that they do. So I'm going to scroll down by that. And then of course, this is the form that you all fill out annually, or maybe more. Sorry, do y'all do it more than?
No, we only do it annually.
Yeah. So this is the form that you all do. Pretty straightforward, but I wanted to make sure that y'all knew that there was this instruction thing that's like the counterpart to the form. So it tells you all of the stuff here. Yeah, and it kind of goes through each thing, right? And it gives you some definitions, which I think is really helpful. One of the things that really resonated with me when I had to do these report forms is that, you know, sometimes you don't find your job description, like it's more about your function than like the name of your position, right? Yeah, it's not always apples to apples, right? But yeah, so they have this great again, little guide that goes with your report that gives you examples, which I think is really helpful. So kudos to our friends at MUSKIE for putting all of this together. Because I know there's like often like confusion about partially served, and like it can be confusing, but I think that their guide really helps break it down. The other thing I wanted to share, oh, this is for administrators to look at the data, but it might be helpful for you all to see like how Artesia and then your state administrator like looks at your data. That's for administrators, but there's a video too. If you are more of a learner of like, you know, let me watch this video. They have that, and then some different tools. So I was going to share that. So they have this helpful hints situation. Terry asked if this is new. It's not new. I'm just sharing it from the MUSKIE website. One of these things might be, that video might be new. Yep, thank you for dropping the link in there. But I know sometimes I would get questions when I worked at another coalition, like, what does this mean? Why are we asking this question? And a lot of folks didn't know that there was this like guide that went with it, that went with the report form, and then like this, like helpful hints. So this is just like even extra information about how to complete your report. And then this, so crafting narratives, like telling your story behind the data. I wanted to lift this up because I think it's so important. And I know that working in direct services is challenging. There's oftentimes not enough time to do all your reporting or to tell your story in a way that helps, again, understand all the data that you're giving, because, you know, the data is just one piece of the puzzle, right? But this webinar that MUSKIE did, they've done it in different spaces, really helps you understand like how to craft that narrative, how to really show what's happening in your community, what the needs are, what you need as a program to help survivors. And I just want to make sure that you all understand that this information is used, right? The folks at MUSKIE really, this is like their whole job, is to review this data, to share reports with Congress about all of the awesome work that you all are doing, the remaining needs. I mean, I know that these reports, these pieces of narratives from these reports over the years have really informed how funding gets out into the world, right? So I know sometimes I've been guilty of it myself. I'm like, I'm just going to write this really quickly, like, but really thinking critically about what we put in those narrative pieces. I'm telling you, it definitely makes a difference. And you may have seen even of something that you've written in these reports to Congress. So yeah. And what I do is like, I have to report every 6 months and not every year. So, and I remember just doing that, having to do that annual one, and how difficult that is to like, what happened in this year. But I just keep like a Word document running of like things that I want to put in the narrative, right? So I've written a lot of it before I even get there, even if it's just some bullet points. So I wanted to make sure, like, if you can carve out some time to watch this webinar, I think it'll be helpful to you. And I want you to know, like, I can't speak for all funding sources, but know that your OVW reports are being read by multiple people. It's being used. It's going to Congress, like, and it's important to do. Do you have thoughts on that too, Artesia, about these reports and like how it's helpful to you all at the coalition as well?
Yeah, so at the beginning of each contract, I personally send out with the executed contract, the budget and so forth, I send a link. And Nalika, I will populate that link back in for you. I send out this link of information to all of our administrators for the contract. Because yes, I found this very resourceful as well as very helpful to provide in the step-by-step instructions to our programs on how to fill out the report. And like Catherine said, it is difficult because we do a report annually. So we're taking 6 months for one fiscal year and then 6 months for another fiscal year of our grant, but still for the same year, to make it a calendar year. So yeah, it will be very helpful. If you have any questions while you're reviewing that link, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Elizabeth is going to share her contact information, so she can also provide you some guidance on it as well. And I had the opportunity to participate in the webinar that you just uplifted, and you are so correct. It helped me out a lot with learning how to craft the narrative for our as an administrator point of view as well. So
Yeah, and I think it's just so awesome to know, like, the data is being used, right? And I'm not just writing this to check a box for a funder, which I've had grants like that before, right? Like, I'm like, they're not doing anything with this, or they're not reading it, they don't even respond, right? But it is being used. Yeah.
and from my understanding, that's the way that we using the MUSKIE report also is reported to Congress to let us know how we obtain additional funding and what are our needs and everything. So it's very helpful. It's resourceful at the end.
Yeah. And MUSKIE, the folks at MUSKIE are super helpful too. So if something's going wrong with your report, like if the form is being weird, like they will get on it for you. So don't hesitate to reach out or go through your coalition here to get help too.
And Elizabeth, thank you for popping the link back in. So Nylika, if you want to try that one and let us know if that one works for you or not. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we've reached the point for Q&A. Oh, glad it works. Yeah. So please, anything, like a lot of what I shared earlier was very like, technical and the regulatory stuff. And I'm happy to talk more about services or not so technical stuff, if you will. So if there are other questions, we have some time. So let me know what's on your mind. And I'm just popping these slides back up because it has my contact information, but also wanted to just lift up our whole website and to note that we are about to, fingers crossed, launch a new website that'll be much easier to navigate. But for the moment, that is our that's the SASP page. But then I put in the chat the rural and multi-service page, which has a lot of great information for local programs. And then there's that link again. And then your coalition is a huge resource to you all. And it sounds like a lot of you are already connected, but just, a good reminder of the support that you have there in New York, who understands the New York landscape. And then this is how you can find me. And I see there's some more things in the chat.
And we have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So Kathleen, a question. If we are wanting to add a group, will we need a budget modification? And Kathleen, my apologies, when you say group, are you referring to one of the groups that Elizabeth discussed earlier? Yes. Okay. So as long as if you have that already, like within your, if you have it within your budget, within your approved budget already, then no, you wouldn't have to. But if we could take a look at it and find out and make sure that if it's covered or not, because I'm not thinking about your budget off the top of my head. And if it's not there, then we can do a quick budget modification to make sure we include it. That will not be a problem at all.
Other questions? Well, while y'all are thinking, I just want to share the slide that we are able to come and chat with you today because of our funding through OVW to provide technical assistance for SASP. So wanted to thank them for the opportunity to do this, and thank you all for the opportunity to have a big chunk of your day. So thank you for letting me come and chat with you all, and thank you to NYSCASA for the invitation. And we are still here, but I just wanted to share that. And then, feel free. I know Artesia put my contact info. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk about any of these things on a more individualized level. I'm happy to do that and happy to work through the coalition to do that too.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm just gonna try to give you a little bit more back of your time in this day. If no one has any questions or concerns, as Elizabeth stated, her contact information, you know how to reach out to me and our team as well. I want to personally thank you, Elizabeth, so much for taking your time out to come and meet with us today and provide this wonderful presentation. It was a very informational. Greatly appreciate that. And we are looking forward to collaborating with you in the future, especially to see how we can broaden our programs and utilize innovative ways for groups such as Kathleen's already mentioned. So thank you for doing that. And if you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or our NYSCASA team member. And if we have no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and close. And I hope that everyone has a great and wonderful day and enjoy your weekend as well.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.